my keyboard. And what that just did, NetBrain did not just forget about that switch. I just said I don't want to see it on this particular dynamic map. Remember, what part of the network am I interested in right now? And so as far as laying this out, I can click and drag to rearrange stuff. There's also some tools to help me with the layout. So the two that I want to focus on, I find by right-clicking any blank space on the map. And yes, you can right-click devices and so forth and get a contextual menu. But the two tools I want to mention, first of all, auto link. This allows me for any given topology layer to select all links of that layer, add them all, or remove them all. So if I say add link for L3, we see that all the redundant logical connections among these devices are shown. And I could, of course, click and drag to rearrange the layout, but let's go with auto layout. And I can create customized layout styles, but there's some built-in ones, and symmetric and up and down tree are usually your go-tos. So let's click. And there we go. So that's an example of building and laying out a dynamic map. I should also mention while we're here a couple more things. First of all, if I want details about a particular device, I just double left click on it. And we see in its device details, we see, first of all, the properties, what's in the database about the device, its various interfaces, and so forth. We can see the latest copy of its config, where does it fit into the local topology, what CLI commands have been run against it recently, and what were the results, and then what are any data tables. So there's certain types of data, we call it the built-in data types, that NetBrain just knows how to pull from any supported device types automatically. This includes things like route, ARP, MAC, etc. And if we go under NCT, there's quite a few other options. There's many more than this potentially. So what is pulled and how often and so forth, that's entirely up to our NetBrain administrator. But I did want to let you know that these data sets exist because they will come up much later in the class if we have time. The other thing I should mention is we can teach NetBrain how to gather and utilize any sort of information that's gatherable via CLI, SNMP, or RESTful API. But what's nice about the built-in data types is they're just out of the box, part of our basic driver support, so you don't have to fiddle around with stuff. Okay. I should also mention up here, we've got our zoom controls, so I can use these zoom controls or just the scroll wheel on my mouse. If I zoom out, then I get, you notice, less and less information. If I zoom in, I get more and more information on demand. So in this case, we're looking logically, so I'm seeing routing, multicasting, things like that. If I was looking at L2 links, I'd be seeing speed, port mode, duplex, etc. You can have multiple pages within a map. So for example, if I wanted to have an L2 page as well, I could duplicate this L3 page. And on this one, I'm going to L3 unlink, L2 add link, and then I could lay it out. I can even turn this into expanded style for switches and so forth and make it into a circuit diagram. So I could go on just about dynamic map building and layout for hours, literally, but these are just some very basics. I want to just make you aware that they exist, essentially. And we can go into much more detail after class if anyone wants. Also, remember I mentioned personalized maps, so I could go up here and create my own copy of this map. In this case, I own the master map, so, there's no point to it. So any questions about anything we've discussed up to this point, folks?
Can I ask a quick question?
Mm-hmm.
So if you save this map and you have Discovery running every night, I'm on the engineering side, so I'm less concerned about all the intent and sort of dynamic mapping things. I'm more concerned with sort of producing a run book or a documentation of current state. If,
Okay.
for example, BR02 router 1 gets the port that it gets changed from core switch 1 to floor 2 SW01, and then discovery runs, will the map automatically update the connection, or do you have to redo the connected neighbors?
Okay, so first of all, NetBrain's not going to know about that until it takes a system benchmark, pulls a fresh set of config data from the devices, and then recalculates the topologies. Most administrators will set this to run every 24 hours, but you can have it go as often as you want. So that's the first answer. The next answer...
We do ours nightly, I think, yeah.
Right. Now, as far as this specific map, if I go ahead and save this and don't touch it for 6 months, and then 6 months later I come back and the network has changed as you describe, my map here is still going to look like this. Because a lot of times we make maps for specific instances, specific problems. And so if we want to go back to it much later, typically we want to see what the network looked like at the time. But, of course, there's maps that we use over and over again. So what I can do once this won't work until it's saved, but I can go to map, update map, and then this will update it according to whatever the latest topology is, and it would change that as needed. I might need to do another auto link, things like that. Although usually if you've got it connected, it'll sort it out. Now, for maps that are associated with sites, with device groups, or maps that are stored in the public share, as part of a system benchmark process, you can have that update take place automatically and even associate it with a custom layout style.
So maybe I might have a question for afterwards. Like we have integration with NetBrain is polling our VMware environment. So it's polling, it gets hosts and vSwitches and VMs. And so say I have an application that I have mapped, and I'm interested in keeping the map current, through vMotions and things like that, where a VM is going to go from one host to another, so from one vSwitch to another.
Well, if you save, rather than having a specific map, what I would say is, basically I would do it through the Path browser, and ideally the application assurance module will make your life much easier in this regard. But Brian, I'm going to say let's put a pin in that, because later I will talk about what the path calculator actually is. So before I kind of have to tell you that story before I can tell you this one.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yep. Just don't let me forget at the end of class. If I don't remember during class, ask me after, and we'll go into some more detail.
Sure.
Yep. No, very good question. Any others from you or anybody else? And so another thing that I'm going to kind of tease you with, Brian, is that if you want to make sure that your switch connectivity stays the same, that your configs don't drift, that's where you might start programming a whole bunch of network intents and then set them to run on a scheduled basis and send you alerts if anything comes back different than it's supposed to be, or it'll show up in the PA dashboard that we'll see later. So that's one of the primary uses of network intents, is to prevent config drift. So as someone more involved in the architecture side, that might be an exciting use case for you to get into when you're ready. All right, so Patrick says, I have view only version open. How do I get the map icon on my desktop? So how do I get the map icon on my desktop? I haven't saved it yet, so I would just save it to my desktop. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up here to the upper right. This is actually the next thing I was going to do anyway. And I'm going to click Save Map. So you can see I can save it to the desktop, just like in Windows, privately and publicly. So I'm going to save, in the class lab, please only save stuff privately whenever possible. This goes for all file types, because anything that's stored publicly in the class lab is subject to periodic purging without notice. Basically, whenever things start to get cluttered, I will just go in and wipe stuff that isn't needed for class. So that only applies to public stuff. Be aware. All right. In your own environment, though, obviously do what you want. All right, so I'm going to save this on my desktop. I'm very creative, so I'm going to call this NetBrain 101. And there's that. Now, typically, if I want to share this with other users, I will go through an incident, but I can share the map directly without using an incident. So if I click the share button right here, I can share this map to a specific email address or username and click share. And not only will they get a notification within NetBrain, which is the speech bubble icon over here, but also it'll actually try to send the recipients an email if my NetBrain is set up to be able to do that, which it should be. The other thing I can do is every map has a unique hyperlink. So I can copy the hyperlink for this map now that it's saved, and I can paste this into the Zoom chat for everybody. And anyone who has both that hyperlink and a valid user pass to this domain can view my map. So that's you guys. You now have the URL in the chat, and you all have a valid user pass because you all have a NetBrain University account. So feel free to come take a look at my map. And in fact, anyone who chooses to do so, you'll actually be helping me out a little bit later. So, all right. Now let's go ahead and create an incident. So I'm going to click on New Incident here in this case. And so I could link this map to an existing incident by name or by number, or I can just create a new one. So to create a new incident, I'm just going to give it a name. And again, being very creative, this is NetBrain 101, and today is 2023-03-07. Apply. And in addition to my name, it has assigned it an incident number in NetBrain. So the logical next question to ask is, can I synchronize this number with a ticket number in my ITSM? And the answer is no, not directly, at least not yet. I've heard some rumblings about something to do with that, but it's certainly not in the current iteration of the platform. Now, at the moment, there's a very elegant workaround for this, which is simply if you're creating a NetBrain incident that parallels an incident in, let's say, snow, what you do is you include the snow ticket number in the name of your NetBrain incident. And I could go in later and edit this incident and change the name, because in the search bar for incidents, I can search by name or by number. So that way, if I search for either the NetBrain ticket number or the snow ticket number, I will then find the appropriate incident. How cool is that? So now with the message feed, I can type in whatever I want. So if any of you guys have gotten into the map, you can open up the incident and see what's going on. And if anybody is in here, I would appreciate you dropping a message into the incident so we can see what multiple people contributing looks like. And if I mouse over here, you can see, who I am and what's going on per the data in the NetBrain system. The specific functions. So, all right, so two questions. First question to Patrick. He saw on my desktop, which I can switch to down here, he saw a couple different icons, but you're not seeing it on yours. So the way that I got these here is I went into the start menu and I clicked the push pin icon to pin this particular function to the desktop. Sorry, I think I forgot to mention that. So that's the answer to that. And then you can auto arrange and sort and stuff like that. The difference between desktop and private is they're both private and specific to your user account, Tom. The difference is something stored to desktop will show up here, as this one does. Something stored to private will not. I'll have to go into my files to see it. Okay. All right. So there we go. That's cute. Now, if you guys are wondering why your usernames are this hexadecimal gobbledygook, it's in the class lab specifically, your usernames are deliberately obfuscated to prevent people from data mining your info out of the system. But that's just something we put in place in the class lab specifically. All right, now we have all sorts of rich text formatting tools available to us here. We can also hashtag specific devices by host name or specific maps by name to link them in. And we can also mention specific users with an @ symbol.